Hey guys, back again. So, how are you all going? Hopefully, you're going well. So, we did the rewiring, we did it two ways, the affirmations, the I choose, and that hopefully is helping you have a far better, more positive voice inside your head, changing the way you think, changing your subconscious beliefs and thoughts about yourself. We did the inner child work. We learnt to hold that sort of space gently, tenderly, take responsibility for it, listen to it, allow it, even if you didn't like it. And so we're starting to develop these skills, hopefully. And I thought it'd be, I know after feelings aren't facts, so we talked about how feelings aren't facts. And so I want to talk to you more about feelings, because I think once you start to have a different relationship with your feelings, lots of feelings will come up. And part of the process of recovery is about giving yourself time and patience and understanding. Because you might not like some of the feelings that you are starting to allow yourself to feel. And I do say that you've been taught to repress, deny and avoid, but now you're allowing yourself to have feelings about everything and anything. And this is where it gets a bit tricky, because as you come into a deeper sense of awareness of what your mind's saying and how your body is feeling, how you feel emotionally, you will start to have emotional responses that maybe you struggle with. For example, possibly rage, possibly a lot of anger, maybe even fear or sadness or grief. It could be any of it. Now, these emotions can be triggered by other people, by situations. And I just thought it'd be interesting to use a specific experience that maybe you have witnessed or not. I've been very drawn to watch the American politics as they are voting for a new president. And if you are watching any of that, you will see there's a lot of people having a lot of big emotions, going into a lot of fear and reacting angrily, withdrawing, leaving the country. And it's actually quite interesting to watch this happen on a global scale. And if you watch any of the independent news channels, X, Rumble, you'll see that, this is maybe not so much on, actually, no, the Australian Sky News is very interesting. They run a series on The Left is Losing It, which was really interesting. But you don't often see it really in the mainstream media, but you do get some of it. And so everyone is starting to feel lots of feelings. And I actually think this is right and true, and just a ramification of we are healing at a planetary level. So individually, but also macroly out in the world. And so as you start to get better and heal, you start to connect more with your emotions. And guess what happens? The deeper you go emotionally, the more your mind opens up to see things you wouldn't normally see. This is like coming out of denial. This is like seeing things a bit more clearer. Some of our behaviours, some of our maybe expectations, some of our patterns, some of the things that we do, maybe the denial comes from not seeing us as we clearly are. And starting to have a deeper understanding of the good, the bad and the ugly. I call it that because I think we are all, evil runs through every heart. And once we engage with our own inner good, bad and ugly, as I like to call it, and we love like, we allow the good, bad, ugly to come up in an unconditional way, because growing up, you were taught, if you're not a good girl, I won't love you. Or if you're not a good boy, I won't love you, right? So we taught conditional love, which is kind of just the way it was. No blaming of anybody here. It's just the way it is. They're trying to teach you to navigate the planet Earth, which you have arrived on. And so that's just part of the socialisation process. But it's about, we learn to repress and deny the darker aspects of our own personality. So the greed, the anger, the negativity, generally. And so we're now all, those feelings are coming up, and we're having to learn to embrace them in different ways. And this is what this journey of recovery is about. It's about you learning to love and like yourself unconditionally, and embracing your own inner wounds, your darkness, all the things that you were told makes you bad and wrong, unlikable, unlovable. And so feelings are a natural occurrence of you doing all the work you've done. So maybe you're coming along this journey and you're starting to say, well, I don't feel any better. And I think, well, great. This isn't about you feeling better instantly. This actually might mean you feel a lot worse, because you're starting to think more clearly, you're starting to manage your emotions more effectively, and you're taking care of yourself. And of course, those emotions are now coming up, and what are you going to do with them? And it's about you, as they come up, you learn to understand them. You learn to give yourself, you see that board? Attention, affection, allowing. All those, that's what you needed growing up, that's what you didn't get, and now you have to learn to allow it, whether you like it or not. It's just a message, and what is that message? And I think it's interesting when you start to really dig deep into that. Well, what's going on with me? Why am I so angry? Why am I miserable? Why am I sad? What's going on? And a lot of us have a lot of unresolved, unhealed wounds from the past. I don't want to call it, we heard that, baggage. I mean, I have used that terminology, but I don't know, wounds is kind of, I think, we are wounded, and we have to understand that, because that's the denial that will keep us from healing and keeping stuck, because we don't want to look at the truth that perhaps my parents weren't always there for me, attending, allowing, accepting, acknowledging, validating. And in fact, they kind of did the opposite sometimes. They gaslit me. They told me what to think and feel, and not by words, sometimes just actions, And so we have to start to really engage with those emotional parts as they come up, or as we get triggered. A trigger is just a moment where, and I have done a video on triggers, it's just a moment when you get to feel it and heal it, if you can be within a space to do that. Sometimes the trigger will kind of disconnect you, you'll react, you'll withdraw, you'll get frozen, you'll appease, you'll play blame games, and they're the defense mechanisms or survival stances kicking in, depending on the severity of the trigger. And so this is about being open, trying to be as honest as you can emotionally, not psychologically, but emotionally. Oh, I'm feeling what? I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling excited. You see, you want to feel the good stuff. Well, it's, and maybe you allow yourself to feel the good stuff, but to enable you to feel all of it, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's all good, bad. We just call it good and bad. It's just feelings. And we judge them, and some we allow, and some we don't allow, and we repress. That actually takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of energy to repress some feelings and not others. It takes a lot of energy to hold yourself in that space of, because repressing emotions takes a huge amount of energy. Holding on to resentments, wounds from the past takes a lot of energy. I think this is why some people are so weary. They're just so weary because they don't realise subconsciously they're repressing, holding on, carrying, being weighed down from all of that. And that's why sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better. And some people have to have almost a psychotic breakdown, which is, to me, is just a spiritual awakening. And so don't be afraid. Be afraid and do it anyway. That's probably more liking it, feel the fear and do it anyway. Because what's the alternative? What is the alternative? If you don't do the work, what's going to happen? What's life going to look like? And so if you're starting to get a bit annoyed and antsy, what's going on? A lot of people will feel that way, or even sad as well, when they have grown a little bit. So this is why this is appropriate to talk about right now. When you do the work and you've grown a bit, you've changed some of the thinking, you've changed the way you feel, you start to get a little bit unsatisfied with life, because maybe you've been a square peg and those edges, as the healing happens, you start to become a bit more round, but the round wants to go back into the square hole. And of course it doesn't fit and it doesn't feel right anymore. And that's your being, spirit, energy, telling you there's no going back, because sometimes we want to go back because we're afraid of change, we're terrified of change. And so now you're moving out, and this is a scary place for a lot of people to be, because yes, you've done some work and you're doing brilliantly, and that's fantastic if you've done all that. I'm so proud of you for doing that. It's not easy to do this work. So now you've stepped out, there ain't no going back into that square peg or round hole. I mean, whatever, image you want to have of that. You've sort of moved beyond it. You've expanded. So maybe the square peg, you've expanded into something slightly bigger, something more, rounder. And there ain't no way you're getting back into that square peg. And there's no going back, but there's, well, what's happening in the future? Where do we go from here? And this is the scariest place of all for a lot of people, because this can lead to the dark night of the soul. It's like, but I don't know who I am. I was this, that's my identity, and now I'm in this in-between space. And check out something called liminal space, which is you're on the threshold of not who you actually want to be, but you're no longer where you were or who you were in the past. And so you're in this in-between, and you spent your whole life not wanting to be here in this liminal space, because you don't know up from down, or which way is up. You don't know anything. It's a very untethered place, because even though being tethered wasn't working for you, it's being untethered is terrifying, or it can be, and very scary. So you're in this I'm not who I was, but I don't even know who I want to be. And this is for me, it's the most exciting part, because now you get to think about, well, who do I want to be? What do I want? What's important to me? What are my own value systems? You are always becoming. You're not just this person, you are becoming. And I think when you start to have agency, and these are therapeutic words, agency, you'll be proactive, you start to actualize, you start to be the person you want to be. Well, first of all, you've got to think about, who do I want to be? What does that even look like? If I was free to choose, what would my life look like? Who do I want to be? Now, you can gauge that by looking at some of your affirmations and your I choose script. And that I choose to know that it's safe for me to be free. I choose to know that it's safe for me to be adventurous. I choose to know it's safe for me to be courageous. So that gives you an idea. Well, I want to be courageous. So what does courageous look like? Maybe it looks like going for a new job. Maybe it looks like going on an adventure, going traveling. Maybe it means leaving a very destructive pattern of relationships. And that takes courage. Maybe it means doing something that scares the bejesus out of me. You see? Okay, so, and when you understand that's important to you, it's part of your value system. And I've got a whole sheet on values, so if you want that, just sing out, I'll send it to you. So you can work through what is important to you, and you get to the point where you understand who you want to be. And I always share a story, because I think if you see smoke coming past, it's just my diffuser. I'm not on fire. I remember, and I've shared this before in another video, I didn't realise that every time someone asked me to do something and I said no, I was betraying myself on some level, because one of my main values was courage. Well, every time, and I didn't know that, so this isn't because I knew it, but I knew I didn't feel good about saying no, but I was terrified of saying yes to whatever they'd asked me to do, maybe share with some people about, I don't know, what I'd gone through. And once I realised that was my value, because some of us don't actually know what our values is, we just take on board what parents were or what we've been told is important. And so we don't really know what ours are. And this is knowing thyself, becoming more empowered and realising, well, what's important to me? So I want to be courageous. And every time I said no, I felt like I was not working out of my own value system. And once I understood that and I started saying yes, I wasn't any less scared. I was still terrified of doing whatever they'd asked me to do, but I knew I had to do it. And I felt so good afterwards. I mean, at the time I was worried, anxious. In the beginning, it took, a lot more out of me. But now I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And now I love it and I'm excited about doing things. But in the beginning, it wasn't the case. And you do have to push through that fear and do it and do it and do it. Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight. And to be fair, sometimes we still feel a bit anxious. And that's as it is, it's not wrong or bad. Obviously, if you're challenging yourself, it's always going to be a little bit, intimidating. And so once you understand what's important to you, and I like doing this with clients because I think a lot of people don't even have no idea of what's really important. And I'll sit with a couple and I'll sit with a man and I'll see that one of the most important things in this person's life is to be a good dad or a good mum. And I'll say that. I'll say, it sounds like you really want to be a good dad. And they can actually be quite upset when they hear that because it's like, yeah, that's right. And maybe they weren't, it's like they knew it on some level, but not on another. And it's not until someone says to you, I can see that it's really important for you to be a good dad. And they're trying really hard to be a good dad. And the thing is, if you don't know that that's one of your really key values, then you are going to betray yourself on some level. And every time you do something which leaves you feeling like in that moment you weren't being the person you wanted to be, which is a good dad, for example, or a good mum, you betray yourself because you're working outside of your own value system. A lot of people don't even realise that they're doing that. And this is why a lot of people are struggling and don't even realise why they're struggling. I mean, I never knew this about me. I didn't realise courage was one of my values. And every time I didn't step out and be courageous, I was betraying myself on some level. And this is what we have to learn and understand and figure out. And this is a figuring it out. And, this is not always easy. It takes a bit of time and energy. And I know a lot of people haven't got that time and energy, but personally, I think it's the most important thing you ever do. Because how can you live life on your terms if you don't know what's important to you? I work with a lot of women who they want to be good mums. But they were taught along the way, because of the way they were brought up, and actually they've become very people-pleasing people. A bit of a perfectionist maybe, all symptoms of trauma, by the way. And what they do is they live life on other people's terms. And they don't live on their terms. Now, if you do that as a woman, what are you role modelling to your children? And so can you see that I want to be a good mum, but if I'm living life on other people's terms and doing what I think they want me to do, then what kind of role model am I demonstrating to those children? So they see me people-pleasing. And out of people-pleasing, I think, always comes bitterness and resentment, and, we can look like martyrs. And so it's about, you want to be the best parent you can be, the best mother you can be. Well, that's about doing what you really want to do as opposed to doing what you think other people want you to do. That's a person that's out of balance. Yes, I do it because that's what I've been taught. Be a good girl, be there for everybody, take responsibility for everyone, people please, perfectionism, perfect. And then your heart is like, but I don't really want to do that. Oh, no, but, no, that's what good people do. That's what, if you love your kids, you bow down and sacrifice your life for them. And that's, I think we have this generation, and I'm one of them, the ski generation, spending the kids' inheritance. Because it's like, well, I feel guilty. If I want to sell the house and go around the world and maybe, I don't know, do something amazing and do something for me, then, well, you're very selfish, and the kids won't appreciate that because they won't have any inheritance. Well, that money is not theirs. That money is yours to do whatever you want to do with. You worked hard for that, and you have every right to go and spend it any way you choose to. And there's a lot of people that struggle because they feel guilty, they feel bad, they feel wrong, they feel ashamed, because they've been taught to live life on other people's terms and not on their own. So living life on your own terms, being the person you want to be, understanding yourself, knowing what's important to you, knowing what your values are, you know, who you want to be in this world. Making peace, loving all the parts of you. Because this is the key, you see. I used to be a rageaholic. When I was raging, I would hate myself, condemn myself, do a jobby on myself. And then I would bury that and then go around that cycle again. I might be 6 monthly, might even be a yearly cycle, but it might be a monthly cycle or a 2 monthly cycle. It wasn't until I got to a point where I could not like, because I never liked the fact that I felt out of control, but I had to embrace that part of me, the part of me that was rejected and that now I'm rejecting. And when I started to embrace my own darkness, my own pain, my own sadness, my own rage, guess what happened? I felt safe. I didn't react the same way as I used to. Now, that didn't happen overnight. It took time and energy. And me, you know, kind of sometimes going around the same mulberry bush. Can I love myself in that moment? Because if you want something to shift, you have to learn to have compassion for yourself. Just because, you know, it doesn't, you know, if you're doing something, you know, like maybe you've got an addiction, if you don't find compassion and try and understand that part of you and realise that the reason you are in addictive cycles is probably because you had to try and cope with something when you were younger, then you're not sort of being there, you're not listening, you're not allowing, you're not offering that part of you love and affection. And that doesn't mean you mollycoddle that part and you kind of fuss over it. It's about recognising, yeah, that part isn't really working for us, and that's not who I want to be. I didn't want to be a rageaholic. I didn't want to be angry all the time. I didn't want to be annoyed all the time and reacting all the time. That's not who I wanted to be. But the key is to learn to love myself, all of myself, even the bits I didn't really like and I didn't respect. And so this is all about, and hopefully maybe as you go through this process of changing this, changing the way you relate to your emotional self, taking care of the body, things are starting to come up, and that's because they're ready to be healed. And so don't be too surprised if you start to feel some and get triggered about things and start to have some perhaps things come up, outbursts. It's just part and parcel of the journey of recovery. And in those moments you have to be very kind, very compassionate, and move in, attend, listen, allow, not mollycoddle. Oh, you poor baby, you went through a lot, because that's just you enabling that part of you. Now, in the world right now, we call it victim, but I think that, you know, as an adult, when someone calls you a victim, I think it's very negative, it's very derogatory. But if you call that part, that's the child part of you, realising that you're holding this pain that you felt as a child, and it's still being held in that child part of you, and it needs nurturing. Yeah, it needs you to nurture it. And this is where we get to reparent ourselves. And as we create that safe space and reparent those parts, we heal, and we heal even more. And we start to realise the truth, the reality. We let down the veil, start to see things as they really are, see ourselves as we really are. I hope that makes sense. Please comment, share, send this to someone if you think it might be helpful. Make a comment. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. and take care. Bye for now.